Welcome back, Tasha Lee, for a discussion of mold.
Thank you.
So, yeah, this is interesting because I've heard, about this. I know that there was a big problem in a house that my mom had, and my family had to clean out. I wasn't present at the time, but they spent a lot of time cleaning mold out. It was a real issue. I know it's kind of a major issue for some people, and then it seems like other people don't really know about it. So, what's been your experience with it? How did you first realize it was an issue?
Well, we were one of the people that didn't know a thing about mold because we didn't have issues with it up in the Midwest. I mean, I just had never heard of it. And so when we moved down to Florida, when we had a washing machine flood, and our maintenance people came in and took care of the breakdown, but we had wet carpet for about 3 days, and we had no clue that that was an issue.
Uh-huh.
We also had a dishwasher that was continually leaking, and we called maintenance so they would come and do something, but it would keep on leaking. So didn't really know that that was an issue other than we would have a wet kitchen floor sometimes.
Huh.
So it just we didn't discover it until actually we started having health problems, and my husband was just like, you know what, I think that it might be mold. I think that our entertainment center is holding water. You could see the water damage at the bottom of the entertainment center. He said, I think that there might be a problem there.
Huh.
So we moved that entertainment center, threw it away because the water had soaked up underneath it and it had damaged the board. But there was mold growing all over the bottom of that, and you could see it in the carpet. So what we learned was that after those floods, the areas got wet. They weren't dried properly. I guess you're supposed to take everything out of the house and let it dry. You're supposed to rip up the carpet and so that the pad underneath they'll take out the pad and put in a new one just so everything can dry. Well,
Yeah.
None of that happened. So I guess the mold started, and then it was continually fed water from our dishwasher leak.
Huh.
So that was how it started. And at the time, I made a video showing, I think we have an issue here, and I really didn't know the depth of the issue or the extent of what would happen. And people warned me, and they're like, mold is a big deal, because we thought, well, we'll rip it. Now that we see this mold, we can, have them cut out this piece of the carpet. We can pull up the pad and scrub underneath there with bleach or something.
Yeah.
Like, no, you don't want to mess with mold. So thus began our journey. Apparently, how much do you want me to say
Well,
right now?
yeah, this is really good. And one thing I'd like to know is, what were the symptoms, the health symptoms that you started having from this?
Well, I had started iodine supplementation, therapeutic supplementation, and so I knew that I would have symptoms of bromine detox. And it was very confusing for me because now looking back at it, I don't know what was bromine detox and what was from the mold. But it just I'd had deficiencies for several years, so I was fixing the deficiencies. Now, again, looking back on it, why did I have so many deficiencies? Not everybody gets all of these deficiencies that I've gotten. But apparently mold does deplete nutrients in your body, and we were living there for 3.5 years, and that flood was when we first moved in. So it could have been from mold, all these health problems I was having from deficiencies. And the main thing was always exhaustion. But as it continued on and it was closer to our point of discovery, the thing that made us made Seth really think something was going on was because I was off traveling, and it was getting so hard for him to breathe in there that he was using like one of those respirator masks. It was easier for him to breathe outside. So if somebody would have said, oh, you've got allergies, it's allergy season, we're like, well, wouldn't you think it would be worse outside? And,
Yeah.
so that was one thing. And he had wanted to move the entertainment center for a while, but I loved it. I wanted to keep it, so it's kind of my fault that it stayed. But then when I came back from my travels, I was sick for like 3 weeks in a row, and I was like, this is not normal. Sick.
Yeah.
And so much mucus, and I would get these headaches. I was like constantly blowing my nose.
Yeah.
And so
All right.
probably the main ones.
So that's interesting that Seth was having issues breathing, but it was kind of slightly different symptoms for you, but they were both caused by mold. Is that right?
Yeah, one of the things was we had cleaned out, when we moved down here, some of our stuff that we couldn't fit in the apartment went into storage. And at some point, we decided we don't want to pay money on storage, so we're going to move this stuff back into our apartment. We put it in our guest bedroom. And I had noticed, we both noticed when that first came in, that room was really hard to breathe in. But we thought, it's just like all the dust. So my husband went through, put everything in sealed containers, tried to get rid of a lot of stuff. So I thought that was where the problem was coming from, and so we just kept that room closed, and I hoped that eventually he would get rid of it. Now what we've learned is that a lot of storage units have mold because when people have mold problems, they don't know what to do everything, so they get a storage unit. So that could have been some of the source of our air problems, but he noticed it elsewhere, not just in that room.
Yeah, and it sounds like that this mold, generally you would think, well, fabrics, rugs, towels, bedding might be a place that you could get mold, but you wouldn't think of like an entertainment center or wooden furniture or tile. Have you found that mold can really be on anything?
Well, the mold itself was on the entertainment center. It wasn't like wood. It was some kind of, I don't know the name of it, but they told us, yes, it does grow on that kind of wood.
I see.
And it wasn't, we didn't see any places on the tile. We saw it around our floorboards. It was like the wood with, the paint it was kind of like warped. It was puffy. Like you could see the water damage.
It was expanding. It was like, yeah, I got you.
But then, I also didn't mention this, but we had wondered like the previous year, like why do we have this strange smell on our clothes and in our drawers? And so we'd be washing them more frequently than we ever had to do up north. And so we're like, well, maybe it's more moist down here. Things break down quicker. But what we think now is the mold itself, like we could only see it in those few spots, like the entertainment center, and there was some on the carpet. But the spores go airborne and travel. So we didn't see it anywhere like on our clothes or anything, but I couldn't smell it, but it was like my throat would swell up.
Yeah.
Around it was hard to breathe around it.
Yeah.
So
this is one of the problems is that when mold gets there's a huge overgrowth of mold, it becomes visible. But the truth is, when it's at that stage, it's sending pores all over the place that you can't see, right? So.
Right. And it can be like a lot of times it'll grow on the wood behind the walls, and so you can't even see it. Or maybe it's somehow has gotten into the HVAC ducts.
Yeah.
And you can't see it.
So every time your AC goes on, it's blowing the pores out into the air that you're breathing.
Yeah, the spores, yeah.
Now, is it true that air conditioning helps to some degree because it dehumidifies?
Yeah, they would always tell us what you need to do, make sure it's cold in there. So it does dry out the air. So,
yeah.
However, when mold toxin, one thing they would say is if, there's mold everywhere, as long as it's dry in the environment, it's not an issue. It's not going to be spreading. Now, we did have a continual leak from our dishwasher, so there was moisture in that mold. But even if, let's just say it was dry, nothing was spreading, the mold spores that are dry, or if they're dead, like maybe you spray concrobium on them to kill them. Okay, so they're dead. However, the mycotoxins, which are, I don't know if the spores release them or they're attached to them, but the mycotoxins that are associated with them, that's what is bad for our health. And you can still, like, I would still get symptoms from the mycotoxins even on dead spores. So
okay. Yeah.
it doesn't matter. You can, it'll still bother your health.
Well, and one thing I thought interesting with you, it seems that now you have a heightened sensitivity so that you know almost immediately when you go in someplace and there's mold. So explain that. It's like, is it because you can smell it or you can feel it when you're breathing, or what is it that enables you to identify it? Because I think you were right, because you came into this house that I'm staying in and you sensed it was here, and I think you're right, because I think I'm starting to have some symptoms after living here for a couple of weeks. So in breathing, and I'll talk more about that, but tell me, what is it that enables you to sense the presence of mold?
In our apartment when we first moved from one apartment to another, we thought, let's get out of that mold. We took everything with us because we were going to slowly go through it and get rid of the things that were problematic. And we ended up bringing the whole problem with us into our new apartment, and I spent 3 weeks going through trying to get rid of stuff. And during that time where I was in this mold, I started to be able to sense I could kind of see an aura in the air.
Okay.
Nobody else could see it, but I could see it. And I also in the body somehow there's like a heightened there's an anxiety around mold where I end up feeling like I've got to get out of here. Like my body is saying, I've got to get out of here, even if I don't know. But
that's really interesting. It's really interesting. It's kind of like, yeah, and it's interesting because the symptoms have reached a point for you where it's kind of, I mean, it's almost ruined your life. I mean, it's like taken over your life. And so you could see how that ability would happen in that it's like your body is not going to tolerate any more mold. Your body is like at the point where it's going to give you a signal somehow, psychologically somehow it's going to say, get out of here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then also so I'm wearing this mask all the time because of this sensitivity, which I'll talk about in a moment. But when I take it off, this is filtered air. It's got HEPA filters on there. So when I take it off, then I can smell immediately what the environment is. So I went into one house recently, and I'm like, I don't smell anything. Wow, that is not normal. Usually I'll take it off. I'm like, oh, smells like mold. Oh, smells like paint or chemicals or whatever. Like I can smell things, just like that. And or like, oh, I smell the smoke in a rented car and nobody else smells it. I'm like, oh, it's there, But yeah, as soon as it actually happened, I think we stayed in a hotel during our time of not having a place to stay. And in that hotel, I think they had major mold problems because after that night, my sensitivity to everything just blew up. And so chemicals, I mean, I would walk into a store and I couldn't handle it, just all the smells. And I didn't even, I think my sense of smell has gone downhill, but instead I get symptoms. So my head will just be pounding, or my eyes are burning, lips are burning, throat is burning around any kind of chemical. We thought we could go camping and get away from, get in some fresh air, but the campfires, the chemicals or whatever it is in the campfires were just, it was horrible.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, we're so sensitive to everything now. And yes, it does there's no safe place basically in Florida because it's either a moldy house or chemicals. The only place that's been safe for me is the beach, which is even sometimes bad because of the mold in the air.
Wow. All right. Now, something that interests me on this is, obviously, a lot of people are living in these moldy houses and not having symptoms. So, one of the things I came across the other day, I think it's Dr. Mercola, is talking about vitamin D as useful in promoting the body's immune system such that it's not as susceptible to mold. What have you learned in terms of our immune systems? And see if you can tie in with this, because I know a lot of people who do like a really strict raw food diet, they get their diet really refined to the point where there's like no toxins in it. Sometimes they can develop this high sensitivity to anything that's not healthy. But if this ends up meaning that you can't really interact with life anymore, is that a good thing? Can you talk about all this?
Sure. I haven't really known anything about. I guess vitamin D. That was one of the things the doctor told us was the special doctor, get lots of vitamin D. So I've really increased my vitamin D. As far as sensitivity goes, Dr. Sam had hypersensitivity like this when he was low in zinc. And he fixed it by eating pumpkin seeds. So I think, yes, we do get more sensitive as we eat a cleaner diet, which is a good thing. I never had a sense of smell before. I'm glad I have a sense of smell now.
Right.
However, I think that there's also various deficiencies that we can get, and maybe we don't know that we're deficient in something.
Yeah.
And then be hypersensitive. So it can be an issue. Definitely, I guess being in mold depletes certain nutrients. One of them is zinc and magnesium. So then it's definitely more of an issue for people who have lived in mold. And then I've been taking zinc for a while, but I can't seem to get my levels up because the mold attacks the gut, which attacks your ability to absorb nutrients. So I'm still low in zinc, even though I've been taking it. So I think, I'm very curious what will happen once the zinc levels are up. Now, I think they are up a little bit because I've done the test for it. You taste zinc and see if you taste anything in your mouth. And I tasted a little more than I used to. And I also feel like I'm not as sensitive as I was.
Oh, can you explain that test? So, in other words, if you put zinc on your tongue and you cannot taste anything, it means you're deficient?
It's like you take a spoonful of this zinc, it's liquid zinc, and yeah, you leave it in your mouth for 15 seconds, I think, and if it just kind of tastes like water, then yeah, you're probably deficient in zinc. If you can taste it, it's usually like bitter. You're like, ugh. Then you're fine on zinc, or you should be.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Okay. Now we probably covered this in our vegan interview, but it's kind of part of this discussion, which is, in a lot in raw food and even in the vegan community, there's a desire to become totally natural in the sense that you don't have to rely on anything manufactured, including supplements of all kinds. And then this desire can lead to deficiencies for a lot of folks. So, and I think if I remember right, when you started out, you were like that. You were like, I don't want to supplement with anything. And I was like that too. I never, B12 nothing. I didn't want to supplement with anything. So, so it's interesting. So can you, perhaps this is kind of going over ground we've covered before, but can you list for us the supplements that you try to incorporate? And do you do that with like one source that has a lot of nutrients in it, or do you do a variety of things? I know like Don Bennett is big on, let's see, vitamin D, B12, and iodine, right? So, and then there's a green supplement. And the one thing you don't want people to have to do is get lost down this endless road of supplementing millions and millions of supplements. So how do you do this?
Up until all this mold stuff, it was the B12, the D, iodine and its cofactors, and the amino acids and essential fatty acids, essential amino acids and essential fatty acids, which a lot of people don't get. But now I'm meeting a lot of people in the mold world who do get those depleted by living in mold.
Okay.
So for those, I've been doing the hemp protein powder, and then with there's and the juiced barley grass powder for minerals in general.
Yeah.
But I cannot probably even tell you all the things I'm on now because it's just a huge long list. I did a blog post about it actually. If I could give you the link to that if you want to see. But there's things to like chelate. There's chelators like chlorella and chelax that bind to the toxins and take them out of the body. So this is specifically for mold and for heavy metal toxicity.
Is it at all reaching a point where you feel like you're taking so many things that you don't know how they're interacting? Yeah,
it's pretty overwhelming, all the stuff I'm taking. But I mean, the stuff that, like, when we went to the doctor, the holistic doctor who has treated people with mold, and he said, you need to be on this and this because you've got to attack the mold, and you need stuff to support your liver during this process. You need stuff to kill off the mold. You need to alternate what you're using to kill off the mold. So we're using 2 different nasal sprays, colloidal silver and hydrogen peroxide, to alternate so that it doesn't become resistant. So it's very complicated, yes. But there's a lot of – the body needs help during this process. So, yes, I am taking a lot of supplements, and I hate it. And I've got my pill box to help me take them at the right time because you got to – I mean, all the timing's important too, and you can't do this with that. And
Gotcha. Do you think it's at all possible that people who are eating a more conventional diet are getting a lot of the nutrients that protect them from mold issues?
I don't think so, because the other people that I've talked to that are experiencing mold, I mean, they're eating all kinds of diets.
Okay.
And the fighting off the mold depletes the nutrients in the body. And they have years of, I mean, I've heard many stories where people don't get well, and that's really depressing. But Dr. Sam went through this mold stuff, and he got well. So that gives me hope. Like, I think that I've hope that I can recover from this.
Okay. And you have noticed since applying these procedures that there have been improvements?
Yeah. It's hard to tell because on the one hand, some of the stuff is to kill off the mold, so then you get a die-off reaction, so you feel worse.
Right.
So I don't know, my digestion is so affected by this. It's like things happen, and then I thought, oh, I'm through the worst part. I'm starting to feel better. And then all of a sudden it's worse than it ever was. And I'm like, wow, it's been a...
Yeah.
It just seems like but so I'm working on my digestion, and I have to do all these things to help heal my gut. And that seems like I'm doing things to help just get through each meal, enzymes and stomach acid and stuff. So it's hard to really tell.
Is Seth following the same protocol you are, or did he not have as bad an infestation in his body as you do?
He's doing many of the same things that I'm doing. He was going to kind of watch and see what happened with me. He's got the same things, not to the extent that I do. But then, I'm talking to him about things that are going on with me. He's like, oh, I had that happen to me when we were in the mold. So I feel like we both had the same stuff.
And is his breathing much better now?
Yeah, once we got out of the mold itself, our breathing, that was, an immediate improvement until we get around mold. And then it's like, whoa, my throat's closing up. It's hard to breathe, so that was immediately improved.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay. Now, when you first noticed there was a problem, I've seen on the internet that there are these companies you can have come and test the house for mold. So did you do that?
We did not do that. There were tests, like Petri dish tests, that people said we could do. We knew we had a problem in there, and we knew we needed to get out.
So there's no need to test it. Yeah, okay.
We're like, because as soon as we moved the entertainment center, it was like stuff got so bad so fast. We're like, we cannot stay in here, and we're not even going to mess with. I mean, we did tests once we moved to our new place, and we had problems because we had brought the mold with us. And but we were told that the tests weren't that hugely reliable. I mean, I think if you pay a lot of money to get some of the very expensive testing done, it's more reliable, but we didn't.
Gotcha. All right, well, I think here it's a good point to recognize that you have introduced yourself into the country music genre with your latest video, and I bring it up here because you've been kind of living in a truck, and I think it's so cool. And now you obviously don't have any mold issues in the truck. You got and you've got fresh air just coming through there.
Right. There's still going to be some mold because we're in Florida. But I parked the truck by the beach. We have an RV lot now that we're renting on the beach. Well, it's on the intercoastal, but the beach is very close, so it's fresh air. There is still moldy air. It's more wet and moldy at nighttime, or when it's raining. But the truck itself is metal, so there's nothing to grow. And I put only things that were, quick dry in there with me. I stayed for a month, and then that was all that we could stay in a truck that we were allowed to. So now I'm back in our chemically awful apartment, and I'm wearing the mask.
Bummer. Okay. So do you have plans to? You're gonna have a new home to move into, right? Is that right or no?
Yeah, we got the RV lot, and then our next step was to find an RV.
Okay.
But there's a company called Live and Light, and they make trailers that are made to last, made to be mold resistant. They're aluminum. So we got that, and you can special order them without like all the chemicals. We didn't do that. We found one that had been off-gassing for a while that's still new, and so that's what's going to arrive for us to live in. Great.
So earlier you alluded to the fact that some people end up having these mold health issues for the rest of their lives. What is the short-term hopeful conclusion to this? Like this doctor that you've referenced, how long did his recovery take?
The doctor Dr. Sam. He said he started feeling better within a few months, but he wasn't living in mold. He was working in mold, but his health problems sounded, pretty bad. So, maybe a few months if it's not like, really bad exposure.
Yeah.
But the protocols from the best known mold doctor, like Dr. Shoemaker, is pretty big in mold, and people who follow that very complicated protocol, it's supposed to take it usually takes 3 years to get well.
Wow. Okay.
So
what are some?
Hopefully not.
Yeah. What are some precautions people can take in their home in terms of cleaning, and maybe even should they have rugs or not? What are some of the things you can do to minimize potential for the unseen mold in your living area?
Oh man. Well, definitely carpet is something that we decided we never want to have again. So tile is good because carpet is definitely a place that mold likes to grow. It likes to grow behind wallpaper. Not that a lot of people have. We used to all have wallpaper, but
yeah.
Definitely keeping the humidity down, using a dehumidifier or air conditioning. And I don't know, you can get checks done. We actually haven't done that much in a home, so I'm not really an expert on this area. We've just tried to run away from it.
Okay.
Dr. Sam talked about putting a moisture barrier in his home. we did a video, an interview, if you want to hear what he had to say. It's called like Dr. Sam's Mold Story or something like that. But
Okay.
there were some by Dr. Mercola, really interesting stuff about what you can do on your house. That was the first thing I listened to with mold stuff.
All right. Cool. That's very cool.